Hey, and welcome to the Publish Press podcast. I'm Steve Birch, and in this episode, we're talking about greenstreetnews.com, which is a real estate publisher based out of the UK. They're based there, but in recent years, they've been growing fast. They've added regions in Europe, in Australia, in Canada, in the United States, and that's meant a lot of growth and a lot of changes to their WordPress platform. They've had to improve and iterate on the platform really rapidly to deal with that growth. And we have two people today to talk about that project. We have Than from the HumanMade agency, and we have Zayshan from the Green Street internal IT team. And they talk about some of the challenges working with WordPress at this scale. What happens when you have to import tens of thousands of posts from a new region and automatically tag and categorize them all? How do you deal with several different regions with tens of thousands of posts? Do you use multi-site? Do you use a single site? What happens if you send out a newsletter several times a day to hundreds of thousands of users and they crush your site with traffic every time that newsletter goes out? All of those challenges have been faced by Than and Zayshan. And in this episode, they talk about some of the solutions they came up with. If you deal with WordPress at scale, I think you're going to find this a really helpful episode. Hey, Than, Zayshan, welcome to the Publish Press podcast.
Thanks for having us.
So you guys represent HumanMade and Green Street. HumanMade is the agency and Green Street is the publisher. Than, you are the HumanMade portion of this, right?
That's correct. I've been working with HumanMade for about 7 years and working on the Green Street site for about 4 years of that time.
Well, this has been a substantial project, really a big undertaking.
Yeah, it really has. There's a lot of functionality in this code base, and parts of it are over 10 years old. And during the time that I've been working on it, I've been constantly rewriting, refactoring, and adding new functionality, and just trying to keep some of the older stuff going, even when it's sometimes hard to understand.
So HumanMade is a UK-based agency, right?
We are. It was founded in the UK, but they've had teams from around the world. They added a team in Australia first, and then a bunch of people in the Americas, and now they're a global agency.
Cool. So you are calling in from Philly, right? From Philadelphia?
That's correct.
And Zayshan, you are the Green Street portion of this, the publisher, right? And you're in London?
Yes, I am.
How long have you been on the Green Street website revamp?
I've been with the Green Street for 1 year now.
Oh, okay. So you and Than basically came in once the project had already started. It's been going for several years, and you guys have come in during the process, right?
Definitely.
So
That's
Than,
right, yeah.
You've been around this the longest. What was the original state of the code base when the project started? You said that the Green Street, although it was called by a different name before, it's been a 10-12-year-old code base. What was the state of this when the project started?
Obviously, it was built before the block editor existed, so there's a lot of the original code it's in PHP templates, and originally that was done using Twig, Timber and Twig templates.
Oh, I remember that.
And we started by some of the earliest stuff that I did on the site was rewriting those to be more closer to the standard WordPress templating system. And since then, we started rewriting them again in places to use blocks in the block editor. Originally, it was one post type for articles and then a bunch of others for data. And now we've added a number of other post types for articles, and as well as making our pages much more dynamic.
Okay, so it's been on WordPress this whole time. It may be a very old code base, but Green Street has been on WordPress for a dozen years or more.
The part of it that we work on is, yes, what is now Green Street News was previously React News, and that part has been on WordPress. Green Street has had other products that have been moved onto the same platform.
Okay, so Green Street was originally React News, and this was probably a little before you came on, right, Zayshan? That it was called React News, it became Green Street, and slowly you've been expanding, acquiring companies, adding different countries?
Exactly. React News was rebranded into Green Street News just about the time when I joined Green Street company. Yes,
And so it originally had a UK base, and you guys have been expanding?
yes. We have been in UK, Europe, and Ireland for many years, and just last year we started in in Canada, and this year in we also have launched into Australia.
Okay, and so if I go to the Green Street News homepage, I see UK and Ireland, Europe, Canada, Australia. Those are the main focuses you have. I think there's maybe a US portion to the company too.
It's upcoming and will become part of the WordPress platform.
So Than, you were probably there when some early architectural decisions were made. What were some of the big decisions you had to make? Did you consider like putting these different regions on a multi-site network, or condensing them onto one site? What were some of the key decisions on a project like this?
Yeah. This was probably about a month's worth of discovery, discussion, and trying to socialize the discussion among the entire editorial and content staff who would have to use the site. What seemed like it made the most sense technically was to have a different site for each region, because then you have a natural separation of content, and it would be easy to manage access because you can just give somebody a role on one site or another to allow them to edit articles in the Americas or in Australia without being able to edit UK and Europe articles. But it didn't seem like that was what worked for the content team. There were a number of compelling reasons why it made more sense to have all the content on one site. Not least is that they're solidifying everything on one API internally. So we wanted to be able to reach the property sales comps with the same API, and have that information shared between all the regions without having to have that functionality running separately on each site. So currently we have everything is on one single site, with a separate post type for each region. And that's basically how we control which shows, or what makes it easier to query for articles in one region or another.
I guess if you move to a multi-site, there's inevitably some siloing of content, which quite often I see that with multilingual sites, for example, that say you have French content, Spanish content, English content. There's kind of a natural grouping of content and the editors, but Green Street only publishes in English, right? So there's maybe quite a bit of overlap between someone that's working on the Irish content and the Canadian content and maybe the Australian content. It's all in English. There's some shared editorial staff and resources.
Yeah, I believe that most content editors have a region that they focus on, but there is some oversight of people who would want to be able to see all the content in one place. And it's easier to see that on one site where it's all in the same WordPress admin and can be accessed through the same REST endpoints or the database queries.
So, Zeishan, the decision was made to build the Green Street website on one single WordPress site. How big is it at this point? How much content are you wrangling on this single WordPress site?
It's massive. I would say over 100,000 articles published within one instance of WordPress. Yeah.
WordPress starts to do slightly funny things when it gets that big, right? You get 100,000 posts. I think. How many users do you have on the site? If you don't mind me asking, do you have a ballpark for how many users?
I would say just under 100,000, I believe.
So WordPress actually starts like turning some things off when you have that many users, right? Like some of the author features are disabled. Things start to get a little wonky when you get up to that massive scale of 100,000 posts, hundreds of thousands of users. What have been some of the challenges of working with a site that big?
I would certainly say that it does start acting up if the site is that big. We have faced challenges with like caching content and serving it to a huge audience. As part of our regular work, we publish articles every morning, afternoon, and evening for each region, and that attracts a huge amount of users within 10 minutes after that goes out.
Is that because it's sent out by newsletter, for example? Do you?
Yes.
How do people? So you drop new content for the UK, Canada. Say you drop it at 9 a.m., midday, and 4 p.m. How do people find that new content that's dropping? Is it a newsletter?
Yes, it is.
So suddenly, like 3 times a day, you get a massive blast of traffic.
Exactly. Yes.
And so you have
it does.
So you have challenges with the caching. You have challenges with what are the things you need to be aware of when suddenly you have a massive blast of traffic like that?
We need to make sure that our servers are scaling up right before that email bulletin goes out. And with Altis, we have been able to smartly outline those times and then scale up our servers. There have been some hiccups, but overall we have been sustained enough to accommodate a huge audience. I would like to tend to add more on that.
Then for people that may not know, what is Altis? How's it? It's a WordPress hosting company run by HumanMade, but what's different about it compared to your regular bog standard WordPress hosting?
I've worked on enough WordPress hosting platforms to feel like there isn't necessarily a bog standard one. But
Okay.
Altis is designed for high traffic enterprise sites, and it has like each site will be a number of different servers. There's like 1 to any number of application servers, 2 database servers, a cache server, and a number of other, like, it's just divided up. There's a special server just for running cron jobs and so on. And I think what the process that Shasan was just talking about is how at low traffic times, there might only be 1 application server running. But when that server starts to develop traffic, we will scale up the application servers. So in normal scaling times, if you go from low traffic to high traffic, it will gradually scale up from 1 server, then another one will come online and so on until they're at a reasonable load. But in the cases where a newsletter gets sent out and there's a huge stampede of traffic to the site, there isn't time for that to happen. So we've had to program in some pre-scaling in those cases. We know a newsletter comes out at 4:05 UK time, so we scale up at 4 o'clock UK time just to be prepared for it, and so on.
Oh, to the minute, 4:05, the newsletter is going to hit, and
I don't
we
know
need to
that
be ready
that's the
for
exact time, but I do know that we've had to coordinate those.
Okay, so I think you're connected to MailChimp, maybe?
Yep, the newsletters go out through MailChimp.
So how does it work to manage that much content in WordPress? You have 100,000 plus posts, and they're divided across 4 different regional areas. I come to the Green Street website. I see the choices. I can choose my region. I see a lot of the content. Is this all built in Gutenberg and the block editor? How are you serving up that content to visitors?
Yeah, these regional homepages are each separate pages built in Gutenberg. It makes heavy use of the query block, the core query block, and we've extended that in a couple ways. First and foremost, we've extended it to allow curating posts and queries. So the top of the page might be one single hero post, and we allow the editors to choose that. And then we have some deduplication built in so that that same post doesn't appear elsewhere on the page. I've seen that that's actually going to be added to core, but we've had to develop our own implementation of it and maintain that.
So there's like a hero featured flag that you can choose inside the query loop, or?
Yeah, yep. We just added it. We added a couple different options because we want to be able to sort, to specify queries by things like region or by specific tags, in addition to having a flag that can be set to make sure that any posts included in this query loop get excluded from other query loops on the page. And then also, because all this is going on and those queries become very complicated and expensive, we had to build our own caching layer around it. So we have HumanMade has a plugin called the cached content, which kind of replaces WordPress, the content function, with a function called the cached content. And it's used for cases like this, where you might have a very expensive page to build and you want to cache that for future visitors without having to resort to just page caching, because most of our users are logged in and page caching wouldn't be appropriate.
Oh, okay. So the vast majority of people who read that newsletter and at 4:05 p.m. every day, they come to your site, they're members, they're paying members. So they log in to see the content. So that makes the caching challenge quite a bit more difficult.
Yeah. Because we have to cache separately for users who have access to a specific page. Some users, visitors might subscribe to US content, but not UK content. And we have to maintain all that as a content restriction, and also cache separately for all these different user levels.
Zeishan, how have your Green Street team taken to the block editor? Has it been a fairly good experience for them, or have you had to make some substantial modifications to make Gutenberg work for your team?
It's been a interesting experience internally. Most of our editors have experience with working on softwares like InDesign, or they have background in print. So adapting to Gutenberg had been challenging. However, with the level of customizations it provides, it almost feels like working on an actual newspaper.
Oh, so you have quite a lot of people who come from an old-fashioned print and paper background. Is that because Green Street / React News used to print out their materials? You have some people from like an old journalism print background?
I would say that many of the people I know have background in print or old journalism even before they joined us.
Okay, so you've had to get them to think in web terms, and you've had to adapt them to the block editor.
Yes.
Is there still a print version now? Can someone actually get a print version of Green Street News?
Major part of our regions, including UK, Europe, Canada, Australia, are entirely digital.
Green Street News has slowly mutated to an entirely online platform with, well, you've said 100,000 posts plus access to custom data sets as well. If someone is a member of Green Street News, they have access to just a massive amount of research on the real estate industry.
Yes.
Interesting, Jishan, to talk about the role of like PDFs articles in the US products, because that is still a carryover from the print era. Even if people aren't getting print articles, they're still used to seeing them laid out as print articles.
For all of the regions, or just for the US?
Most of the UK and Europe regions have transitioned to digital only a long time ago. And there are PDF downloads of articles, but they were done on the website. But in some of the other regions, I think that viewers have been expecting to see articles laid out in PDF format with very print heavy design.
That work is entirely at the Green Street US News, which is not yet been moved onto WordPress or Altis. We do handle print still, like PDFs and things like that. However, it's not part of the UK, Europe, Canada, or Australia.
You have what sounds like Than, you have what sounds like quite a complex membership system you have to support. You have people paying good money for the real estate research, and they're all logging into the same WordPress instance. Some of them may have access to the Canadian research, some to the UK research. What systems do you have in place to handle such a large membership site?
It's another interesting question because of the age of the platform. Internally in WordPress, we're using Restrict Content Pro, and that has kind of grown with the platform. I think that we've started to replace it in places and build out our own authentication and permissioning systems that actually integrate with Green Streets rather than just managing them in WordPress. But for the time being, we're still maintaining these, I guess we could call them legacy systems. Our work with Restrict Content Pro is still in place, although there's a lot of other newer code that handles permissions at a much more granular level.
I think your case study mentions that you've been moving over to a single sign-on system.
Yeah, I mean, that's their whole site is uses single sign-on. We've got an Auth0, which typically is done. I mean, so Sean can probably talk more about the technical setup of it, but from the WordPress side, we get all of our customer information from Auth0 integrated with some Green Street internal APIs, and that's oftentimes customers log in with their own personal SSO into Green Street's Auth0 tenant.
Okay, so Zeishan, is that right that over the time you've moved the membership data and the authentication out of WordPress and into an external database?
Yes, exactly. We have been using single sign-on for some time now. Even though we still manage our user base also in WordPress for various reasons, including supporting our legacy systems in place, including Restrict Content Pro. However, we are now starting to integrate the authentication permissions and what we call internally is entitlements to a specific region via the content we are getting from that Auth0 token instead of relying on RCP, which is old. It causes us twice of work. It's not managed in one place.
But what's that phrase? The ship of Theseus, is it, that slowly, it sounds as if the Green Street website has been slowly, piece by piece, mutated to new systems. You've been upgrading it almost step by step over several years now. The old systems are still in place, but are slowly being moved out in favor of new systems.
One example I came across recently was in the editor controls for building email newsletters. Were built using the block editor, but it was built probably before the block editor was even in core. It's not using any of the rich text components or anything that was later added to the block editor. So when we revamped it recently, we modernized it a little bit, but there's every time we come across a feature that we need to redo, we take the time to modernize it where we can or work with the legacy code where we can't. But yeah, rebuilding in place, just like you're saying.
But there was one moment, I think, when you weren't able to do such an iterative approach. You guys rebranded from React News to Green Street, and there was a change of domain. You guys had to make a big move that I think could have been quite impactful for the site's search engine optimization.
The ironic thing about this, Zeishan and I were just talking about this earlier, is that because this is very subscription based, I think most of the product team really thought about SEO But just because of the semantics of the platform, because we built everything with like when the domain was changed, the redirects were set up properly. It still has a surprising amount of SEO juice. And recently, when in one of our recent discussions about what the future of the platform is, somebody pointed out just how much of the traffic comes from organic search already, even though nobody is paying attention to SEO. And that was just brought home how it's actually very discoverable, even though nobody really paid attention to making it so, because we're using semantic structure and because WordPress is pretty well optimized to begin with.
Also, Zayshan, you may know the answer to this. It may be that only a fairly small percentage of the content is actually publicly available, that
Yes,
a majority perhaps of the Green Street content is behind the paywall.
that's right.
So you were telling me that you'd been responsible for tagging these 100,000 plus posts, that you'd been responsible for adding tags, categories, and perhaps other terms to your enormously vast database of content.
That's right. We were launching Australia region. If we had to migrate over 47,000 articles from that old WordPress website over to our artist-based WordPress website. And because in our website have custom taxonomies for each article, we had to map somehow those 47,000 articles to the existing taxonomies. We call them sectors and regions, without actually having to change anything or add anything to our end. It was a huge effort to manually tag those 47,000 articles. So we decided to utilize AI for that. We have some remarkable people in Green Street who have been working with AI for quite some time now, and with their help, we have actually were able to auto tag those 47,000 articles with almost 90% success rate.
Did you manage to connect to OpenAPI or Anthropic or something, or did you use some internal AI systems for this?
We used many LLMs, and we had a lot of systems internally in place because of the privacy, as well as avoiding AI hallucinations, and ensuring that what it's mapping to is actually correct. So we were doing multiple tests using another AI to investigate previous AI's response and ensure it works. Yeah,
we actually develop and sell an auto tagging plugin that kind of does what you describe. And you're right, it's possible to get these LLMs to like 95% accuracy. But it's weird how often the hallucinations will still slip in. We will manage to, say, add 50 accurate tags or categories to a post, say using OpenAPI. And then for the 51st tag, OpenAPI will just invent a new English word. It'll just like,
yes.
Do you not have a dictionary at OpenAPI? Did you guys not scan a dictionary? Like, where did you get that word from? So I can imagine you guys scanning 40,000 plus posts. You can get like 95% of the way there, but there needs to be some manual checks, approvals to double check the content is accurately tagged.
Yes, absolutely. We had in place of these specific list of tags which we wanted it to assign. Anything outside of those assignments, we would go straight into a warning, or it won't import it, basically. And then we also have many systems in place to manually investigate each article to ensure it's basically working as we want it to work.
So it sounds like successfully tagging 40,000 pieces of content is a process that takes weeks or months even, perhaps.
Easily.
Than, you were saying you'd been experimenting with some AI.
I didn't see any of the
For-
early stages of the process, so I don't know what went on inside the LLM, but I did see the spreadsheets that were passed around and some like manual correction of those, and I saw the scripts that were written to import those spreadsheets into WordPress. It's definitely looked like a large process.
Sorry, my connection got really slow at that point, so I lost what you just said. Than, do you mind just quickly giving that answer one more time so I can follow up?
Yeah, I was saying that I didn't see any of the early stage, the work that went inside the LLM or training the LLM to recognize this stuff. But I saw some of the later stage that Zishan was working on, the spreadsheets that were passed around, the manual correction of those, and the scripts that were written to import those spreadsheets into WordPress. And so, yes. Long story short, yes, it does. It seem like a long process.
Are there any other things that you can use AI for on a site of this size? Are there any other use cases for a project like this?
I'm trying to think. I don't know that we're actively using any, other than in development, in discovery, and things like that, getting some assists.
Okay. So Zeishan, this project has taken on several stages already. You did the UK and Europe, and then you added Canada, and then I think you added Australia. Do I have that right? And are you gearing up at the moment to keep on growing, to keep on adding new regions, to keep expanding?
Yes, that's the idea. We have been very happy with WordPress and artists as well. So it's working very well internally. So it only makes sense if we add more regions and expand this platform.
Than, Otis provides the hosting platform that's basically kind of customized for an enterprise site like Green Street. It seems like there's HumanMade has like a whole suite of custom plugins as well that fit different enterprise needs. It's a hosting platform supported by an agency and supported by a whole suite of plugins too, like for analytics, for personalization, for other enterprise level features.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair to say. There are a lot of different solutions for common enterprise problems out there. HumanMade uses a lot of ones that we've built in-house, as well as a lot of things that were built elsewhere. But yeah, like the offloading the cron runner to a separate server, we have a plugin for that called Cavalcade, which solves a lot of the problems of running cron jobs at scale without, like particularly on sites where there are multiple application servers, because you want to make sure that the same job doesn't run across multiple servers. So we have it all offloaded to a separate server with a separate queue, other things like that. But yeah, one thing that we're using on the site is a plugin that we built called Accelerate. It provides basically first-party analytics, which get stored in a database unique to the site rather than like your Google Analytics. And that also enables us to do a lot of personalization that we couldn't do otherwise without sending analytics data to an external server. We've explored ways of using this on the home pages to show specific sections to users based on what their most visited categories are. At this point, we're still scratching the surface of it, but there is a lot of interesting personalization work that we can do based on this technology.
Like one thing that seems to keep coming up in the background of what you guys are telling me is there's a lot of data privacy concerns involved here. Zeishan, you mentioned that you didn't want any external LLMs looking at your data, for example. And Than, you're talking about having an analytics platform in-house so that the data isn't shared. Zeishan, can you talk me through that? Is that what Green Street is selling is a lot of important private commercial data that really can't leave your internal systems?
Yes, it's a research and news company about commercial real estate. We do a lot of research and advisory as well. So it only makes sense to protect this data from anyone outside of our organization and the people authorized to access it. So we do ensure that if we are using AI, it only has access to certain amount of data that is either publicly available or has been screened through before passed to AI.
Is there a good way to approach that? Do you have to use an open source LLM to do your work then? Do you have to use something that can be hosted internally?
I'm not very familiar with that. It's more of another team's role at Green Street. I'm sure that they are investigating and experimenting into with a lot of stuff, including perhaps self-hosted LLMs as well.
Cool. Okay, so I have a final question that I ask everyone that comes on the podcast, and we deal with publishers, people in the publishing industry, writing newspapers, magazines, even bloggers. I ask if there is a really interesting writer or publisher whose work you're following at the moment, and do you recommend?
I would say that it's not mainly about just publishing, but I do follow personally a construction channel. It's B1M. It's very popular, and I absolutely love their journalism in construction.
Great. So they're in your industry almost. B1M is a publisher that focuses on commercial real estate, on construction.
Might be, yes. Feels like, yeah.
And Than, how about yourself?
Interesting. I was going to go in a completely different direction. I was going to give a shout out to a podcast called Troubleshooting Agile. I think they've got a website called Agile Conversations. But every episode that I've heard, they do a really interesting job pulling out just something about how to get at good ideas, how to spark conversations in your team that get to good ideas. And I feel like I've never had listened to an episode that hasn't given me something to work with and something to bring to the different teams that I work with, and how to get better at drawing out questions and conflicts during groups.
It's interesting the answers we get to this question now, that we always say, who's a publisher that's interesting to you? And over the last few months, we've started to get podcasters and YouTube people, even a couple of social media posters. Zeishan, you did a more old-fashioned publisher, but as we go through this, the answers as to what is a publisher seem to be diverging to include podcasters and YouTubers. And Zeishan, you guys are definitely in more Green Street News, definitely more in the more old-fashioned space, but it sounds like things are going great for you. And Than, Zeishan, I really appreciate a bit of your time today to understand what Green Street News is and how you guys are using WordPress.
Thank you very much.